So to get started, we're going to talk about the tent making ministry, which you and I have talked about a lot because of what you do. But before we do that, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, your family, and where you're at now, et cetera.
Totally. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest in Tacoma, Washington, which is just slightly south of Seattle, and went to college at University of Washington. Was converted as a freshman there and instantly wanted to go into the full-time ministry. We were talking about Scott Green yesterday, actually, a dear friend, and he advised me, don't get a degree that helps you with ministry. Do something that could be a backup plan if ministry doesn't work out. And he was actually getting his degree in, I think it was counseling at the time. And so I did civil engineering as a backup plan while I wanted to go into the full-time ministry. So was an intern there. Then as soon as I graduated from college, moved down to Texas to train to go into full-time ministry.
What year are we in around?
So this is 2010. And,
okay. All right.
About a year after I had graduated from college, did that for 9 months, then found an ex-girlfriend's best friend from high school. We were on the same gymnastics team together. And she was down in San Antonio working at a Starbucks. I was prepping a lesson and she said, "Hey, Nate Bigbee." And this is Washington down to San Antonio.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was crazy. And she was also working at a gymnastics gym. So she said, "Hey, come on over, interview." I got a job on the spot and was the girls' team coach for about 9 months as well.
Okay, wow.
While leading the singles ministry in the church and a part of the campus ministry. Got to do that for about another 9 months before the church had money and I was able to jump back on full time.
Okay, so a little bit about the family.
Yes. So then about 2 years later in 2012, Waldina and I met and got married. We were planning that WDS conference.
World Discipleship Summit.
The World Discipleship Summit with 18,000 members all coming into San Antonio. That was a crazy, we've been planning and working on it for 4 years. So we were working on that and planning a wedding at the same time. So we got married 1 month after that huge conference in San Antonio, and then had Scarlett and Xavier a couple of years later. So Scarlett right now is 8 years old. She's our daughter, and Xavier is 6, about to turn 7. And we were asked to come on down to Corpus Cristi and take over leadership of the church there. The couple was moving to a different city, and so they needed leadership again. And they asked us a second time, right after 3 months after we bought our dream house, that we had gotten all this advice about, and my wife loved it, and we had used it for the ministry all over the place. It was incredible. And then they said, "Hey, how do you feel about moving to Corpus? I know you just got this house. I know you don't like Corpus, but how do you feel?" And God lined up all the dominoes. It was clear that we were supposed to go to Corpus. Then COVID hit.
Wow, amazing. So God's in control, obviously.
Totally.
And did you keep your house?
We did for a year, which was crazy because we had kind of depleted our funds purchasing the place. We weren't sure how we were going to move, and God lined everything up. Two disciple couples came and said, "Hey, we'll rent your place for whatever you need to rent it for the next year." And then it actually became how we jumped into tent making, because we were like, why did you have us buy this house, God? And then a year later, with everything that the market had done, we were able to sell it for a decent profit in 1.5 years.
That's unusual.
Very unusual.
Okay, but so don't get into the tent making just yet. Okay. All right, so very cool overview. Thank you. Now you guys have been traveling around. You're sweeping through Charleston. You get to hang here. Great to have you.
Yes.
What is ideally modern day religion? What do they consider tent making to be, if you know how much you know?
Totally. So a lot of times when I bring up the topic, I get a lot of people that go, "Oh yeah, I'm bi-vocational too."
Right, exactly. Bi-vocational means what? So
bi-vocational would be that they work a 40-hour-a-week job and preach on Sundays or lead a church to whatever varying degree that looks like and means. But I think for me, when I start digging into what their week looks like, there's a lot that within our family of churches, our church leaders do.
Which is International Churches of Christ.
International Churches of Christ. And so we do a lot more getting together with people, a lot more training, a lot more discipling. I think there's a lot more outside of that model that we're not just Sunday preachers.
And in that model, the bivocational model, which is not the tent making model, that's people who literally have a full-time job, focus completely on their full-time job as their career, and then fill in behind the pulpit from time to time.
Totally.
Or almost exclusively. And there's probably usually in that model 4 or 5 couples that do that in that one church usually, right?
There can be, or they are the guy and literally, they work 40 and then as soon as they get off, they're on ministry.
Okay.
And their whole Saturday is spent working on a sermon and maybe getting with somebody else. And then Sundays are chock full too. So
and compare that now to tent making. What is tent making exactly?
So the way that we're trying to approach tent making. So if you look at Paul, Paul, from what we understand of the scriptures, from what I've studied out historically, Paul probably worked around 6 to 7 hours a day. So he gets up at sunrise and then he's working, he's building tents until about noon, where he goes, and then he goes to, especially we get this from the lecture halls of Tyrannus. So that would have started around noon. He jumps over to the lecture halls. He's lecturing all day long until it gets dark, and then probably goes to people's homes after it gets dark as they have, candles lit and stuff in their homes, and he's ministering there. Then gets up the next morning and probably did this around 6 hours a week. So he's working somewhere in the, 30-ish hour a week marker doing building tents and then spending as much of the rest of the time as he can, obviously ministering and preaching, and probably didn't work that much would be my assumption, because he lived such a meager lifestyle that it probably didn't, cost him as much to have a home and all. And there's a lot of benevolence within the ministries.
The church in Thessalonica, especially. So
totally.
I do know, just a quick plug on your Corpus Cristi Church of Christ YouTube channel, you did a whole series on the book of Acts. And that's one of your favorite books. I have watched many of those videos where you peel apart very nuanced insights about the book, just like you shared, which nobody else would have thought about studying. I recommend it to everybody who's watching. Go to his. We'll give you that information later. All right. So if you look up any tent making today, you can find lots of books, lots of articles. It's about overseas mission work. We're going to go overseas, self-fund by finding something to do in that local community, but start a church over there. That's not what tent making is from your perspective. What is tent making from your perspective?
Right. So tent making from my perspective is, we live in a different time than Paul did. Paul had to spend a lot of manual labor time building up this business and doing it. There are so many incredible tools today to where we can quite literally buy back our time, where if you spend a little bit of money, you can get an AI or automation set up, or someone to manage, or someone, somewhere
You're going to be overwhelming people listening now. What,
sorry.
AI? No, that's okay. Keep going. This is good.
I love AI, but using different tools that we have because of technology in order to build businesses that then we don't have to spend that much time on. So my goal of tent making is to make $1,000 an hour. If I can maximize my time to where I'm making that much money, and I can only, and it's not to make a lot of money, it's to make a lot of money in a very short amount of time so that I can give all of my time, or almost all of my time, back to God. I want to work 5 hours a week and completely sustain my entire financial situation for me and my family, and then give all the rest of the hours a week outside of that 5 hours back to God.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, tent making for you is, I'm going to lead a church, but I don't want to be a financial burden on that church.
Totally.
The opposite. I want to contribute financially back to that church.
Yep.
So where did you get this concept of buying back time? Because you've talked to me about it a little earlier today. What is that? I've never heard that until you said it.
Okay. So I got it just kind of hit me one day as we were thinking through, how do we want to build tent makers out? I jumped on a podcast with Rob Skinner, a good friend.
That, yeah. Last year, right? 2 years ago?
The one I did on tent making was last year.
Okay.
And actually you and him were the two guys that pushed me. No, don't wait. Like, you need to dive into this quickly. And so, we did. And as I was thinking about building it out, and I don't know if we're going to talk about it more in a second, but this Venn diagram of how do you choose a career, one of the things that a traditional Venn diagram of how you choose a career is all about money. And I felt like, no, it's not about money. It's about time for God. How can we turn money into time for God. And essentially what that becomes is buy back your time. Now, one of the really popular books right now going around in the business world is a book called Buy Back Your Time. So I listened to that book. I was traveling all across Texas and was just consuming books on audio. And so listen to that. And everything that he was saying really lined up with a lot of what I had already been wanting to do with tent making. And so started putting some of those things into practice for ourselves, trying to batch things into one moment so that like now I only get emails 3 times a day.
You only review emails 3 times a day.
I only review emails 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't get notified on my phone. I get notified at 8 a.m., 1 p.m.
Brilliant.
And after the kids go to bed at night, I'll take another set of emails. And the rest of the day, I mean, I can always check them if I know something's coming in or expecting something from somebody, but I'm not pinged all day long and distracted by things that, you know, just aren't essential and necessary in the time. So putting a lot of the practicals and principles into tent making and going, okay, how can I utilize the best amount of my time? Because I mean, the truth is, if we just had all the money in the world and everyone could just be a full-time minister and money wasn't an issue, that would be awesome. But that's not the case.
It is interesting. Boy, I want to go down that path so bad. But the reason why we all don't is because we want to live a certain lifestyle. We could all be poor, but I think we were talking about it earlier. There were prominent Greek men and women that came to Christ in Caesar's household. So there is a reason why some of us are making the money to access certain places in the American global economy that we couldn't otherwise do if we were just following that life of poverty like Christ. It's not good or bad, right or wrong, one way or the other, but we can all be used. So how did you choose which market segment you would go into for your quote unquote tent making focus?
It's a good question because to be honest, for us, it was less of a decision and more of something that we had. Well, I guess I had been interested in it for years. So in San Antonio, we had always talked about, listen, as ministers, there's not a good retirement plan for you. So you need to figure something out. And if you can, one of the easier things to do would just be move into a house and buy a new. Now, this is in San Antonio a decade ago when a 1,500 square foot house cost $75,000.
75.
Yeah. And so
not 10 years ago.
In 2008.
Okay.
So 15, 16 years ago. When we first moved, one of the guys bought a house for $75K.
Oh my goodness.
Brand new, right next to campus.
No.
1,500 square feet.
So we're sitting in a 1,500 square foot home now.
Yeah.
Brand new, $404,000. So
little different.
It's way different. Okay. So how did that push you toward the market segment you're in? And then tell us about that market segment, please.
Okay. So that pushed us towards investing in real estate. So we bought our first house in 2013. It was a 1,600 square foot house for $110,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
Which is incredible. It's actually, we listed it on the market yesterday. We're trying to sell it to do some other things with some other properties. But so we got that house, then we waited, and, you know, I continually kick myself for not purchasing more houses in San Antonio in that time frame. But, you know, it's always 2020. So then we got that second house that was our dream house and wound up selling it in 2021. But we just always felt like, okay, listen, owning homes, if we can do this thing where we move in and we stay there for a little while, we get a much better interest rate, much better down payment, and we can invest in real estate long term. You get 8 to 10 houses over the course of your lifetime. You start paying them off, and you can actually live on the cash flow from that once you're ready to retire.
That's rental income, though.
That's rental income.
That's not the direction you went.
That's not the direction we are in now.
Okay.
So when we moved to Corpus Christi, we sold that house in 2021 and went, my wife has always loved design work and interior design and is really good at it.
Oh, so when she complimented me on my taste,
no,
you should feel pretty good about that.
No, yeah. Yeah.
Good,
and you did a great job. It looks wonderful.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we blew it up last night. 4 hours to set up this little tiny thing we got, but please continue.
And about 5 renditions of how do we want to make this work?
Did change it 5 times at least.
Fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she always loved that. And we started hearing about, okay, the cash flow differences. So where in our property that was great, we're cash flowing probably after capital expenditures, which is like big time repairs on your house, all these different factors, we're cash flowing around $500 a month.
So let me stop you there for a minute. For those that aren't entrepreneurs, that means we want to, as we run our business, have cash coming in, net amount beyond our expenses. So cash flowing, that's per property, 500 or all together?
That was that first house in San Antonio.
One house, 500 each month. You were making free and clear that you could choose to do whatever you want with. Support yourself with the ministry, reinvest into that or other properties.
Or waste it. Yeah, totally. Whatever.
Or burn it up, right?
Yeah.
Buy a bunch of coffee beans.
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Right. So $500 that one property. The second one was making us nothing. We were just, I mean, it wasn't a financial, it was a long-term buy. It wasn't a short-term buy. So we weren't able to rent it out. Those disciples helped us out by helping us break even on it.
And that's in Corpus Cristi?
In San Antonio.
Okay.
So then we sold that place in 2021 and went, okay, what do we want to do with this money? And so I was still really big on, okay, let's get investment homes. So we found a place that had a 3-bedroom side, and then it had a complete garage conversion to a mother-in-law suite with a full kitchen.
Okay, we're getting a little rental property geeky here.
A bedroom.
Yeah.
We found a property we really liked.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And bought it. But a part of it does help us with the story. So a 3-bedroom side and then another side that were pretty much completely separate. Disciples said, hey, we want to move to Corpus and help out the church and the kind of, I don't know, not quite a replanting, but reinvigoration or whatnot. And so they said, hey, we'll move into the 3-bedroom side. And that covered the entire mortgage. That helped us to break even.
Got it.
So then we had the mother-in-law suite side and we had some extra money left over. And we said, let's get some furniture. Let's try this Airbnb thing because it's a bit scary. You hear the numbers, but there's a lot of investment and you just don't know if it's going to work or not. So we got to try it without any risk because the property's mortgage was already covered. So we went, okay, great. Let's see what happens.
Bravo.
So we did it. And within the first week, we had 6 months completely booked up.
On the days that you chose to rent it or every day of the week?
Every day of the week.
Unbelievable.
Now
that's abnormal. Would you agree?
It is now.
Okay.
But then Corpus Cristi did not allow for short-term rentals, which is 30 days or less, which is the Airbnb space. Now, Airbnb is just a marketing company.
Yeah, everyone thinks an aggregator,
right?
Like Uber. Yep.
Totally. So you can also do midterm or long-term stays on there.
Okay.
But it's furnished. So for us, we went, okay, we have to do midterm right now because the city didn't allow for it yet. And so we had someone book for a month, and then we had a baseball coach come in and he booked the place up for 5 months. The same week they had both booked it. Yeah. And so boom, we had 6 months at, I think it was $1,850 a month average.
What was your cash flow in that, if you don't mind me asking?
$1,850 a month, because the other side covered all the expenses.
Okay, so this again is unusual, right? It's almost like God saying, I'm going to bless this, keep making ministry, your focus. I'm going to help you on the side with your tent making. So your tent making is Airbnb.
Yes.
So if let's say people are on, which I think you have a bunch of your tent makers on today, right? Can I get a whoop whoop from, you're on mute, but if you want to do a whoop whoop in the chat window, Maria, Tover, Carlos, I don't have my glasses on. Is there anyone else? You can let me know later. But what can they focus on and what can other people focus on who's on the call that might be interested in, I want to work for the church in a sense, full-time, not be a financial burden, and do what you do, buying back your time. What are other options people can do?
Totally. And I'm glad you brought that up because so we spoke on this topic at the Small Church Leaders Conference.
Which is where?
So the Small Church Leaders Conference was held in Dallas.
And that was our fellowship of churches.
Yeah, within the ICOC, and it's held every other year right now. And so I had a small room platform type of a thing to talk about tent making.
Oh yeah, this is when you interview with Rob Skinner.
It was right out. Yeah. That's what I was trying to get on.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
So it quickly became into an Airbnb class, which I didn't want.
Oh man.
And I said, hey, here's what I'm about. This is our route. And people went, okay, so on the Airbnb. And I was like, guys, this is not an Airbnb class. This is for tent making. So for us, that's our specific route. But we got blessed by this house that we were able to sell. So we had capital to invest in furniture and all these different things right off the bat. It doesn't mean you can't get into it, but also Airbnb has become a lot more difficult right now as a lot of places are saturated.
Okay. But regulations too, right?
And regulations have gone up. Like New York, you cannot open a new Airbnb in New York at all.
It's congestion, probably.
honestly, it can be anything where you're able to automate as much as possible, which is what we've done with our Airbnb. We use all these programs and systems. Like when we did a mastermind, or I did a mastermind with you, and everyone's talking about employees. And I'm like, I don't have employees, but I have programs.
Which are digital employees, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, I went, oh, okay, well, I can make this program tell me this KPI, or, these different metrics and whatnot. Yeah. So it can be, I think, one of the big ones we're testing out right now, or one of the tent makers is trying to do drop shipping.
That's a very big deal and can be very lucrative.
Yeah.
Online Amazon store you could do.
You could do it, yep.
But let me just re-explain. Bivocational means I work 40 hours a week and I do ministry after work. You're talking about the concept I'd never heard until yesterday, maybe this morning. Buy back your time. That means leveraging an automated way of growing a business so that you can focus almost all of your time on ministry while doing a little bit to maintain the business.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe when we come off of mute and do some Q&A, we can talk more about ideas all of you have about how to do that for yourselves. Nate doesn't have all of those ideas, nor do I, of course. Tell me, what's the potential spiritual downside to this?
Okay. So
for you, let's say for you personally.
Yeah. I think there's two things, and to me, it's all about getting sucked back into the world. So one is greed. And so we talked about this earlier today, but for myself, a lot of the people that I'm learning from are not disciples. They are, like everyone else, they're working in the world and they want to make money for themselves. And they want to buy the Lamborghini and they want to have the massive house in Austin or New York or wherever. And so you're listening to these people and they're all, for me, I have to check my heart about it. It's around every 3 months about why am I doing this and what's my purpose and my goal, because it's really easy to get sucked into, oh yeah, in time, I could totally have a Texas ranch and I totally could have and it becomes the, what can I have instead of what can I give to God? And
Amen. Right. I went into the sanctuary and saw.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So for me, I think that's one of the spiritual downsides. And it's one of the things that anytime I talk about tent making, I tell everyone, I try to annoy our tent makers with how much I talk about not being greedy.
Amen.
Because it's got to be built into our DNA from the beginning, is that this is for God and it's not for me. And so I'm going to learn some of the principles within each specific business subset from the world and some of these guys who have done an incredible job and gone before us. But I don't have their same heart. I don't have their same goal, their focus, spirituality. So I think that's one. And then the other one is tied with money, but it's the time, and that I have to build this. And so I start sacrificing a lot of the time that I said I was going to invest to God into investing for myself. So
that's the temptation.
That's also another temptation is like, well, I've got to do this thing right here, right now. And so I'm going to put 60 hours into it this week. That's an easy, depending on the business type. I mean, I think all business types, you want to grow it, you got to put time in, and it's hard up front. And so there's a big temptation to go hard in the paint right in the beginning. And you do have to do some of that to some degree. And so even within our tent makers meetings, I go, here's a good time of the year to really push.
Lean in.
Yeah. Lean in now because ministry is slow.
Yeah.
But now I need you to lean out because we need to get, going here for the fall or this.
So summer is an example.
Summer is a great time to lean in.
You can actually, almost anybody, even as an executive coach, people don't get as much coaching throughout the summer, right? You can lean in more to the business to grow it, with the concept, hey, when the fall hits, I'm really running and gunning with ministry again.
Totally.
Okay, so you mentioned every 3 months or so, I kind of feel that and I've got to refocus. What is it you hear in yourself or feel or other people see that gives you those warning signs that, hey, maybe my heart is going a little too far and I want to draw it back?
Yeah, for me, it's all about the desire and what I want. And so when I stop thinking, one of my little mantras that I continually, that I reset with is, I'm okay dying poor someday.
Amen, man. Awesome. And I love it.
And it's really hard because I have to get back there.
Okay.
Because as I watch videos or as I learn, or we just got done going to this short-term rental conference, which Airbnb is really short-term rental within VRBO, all of it. The industry is called STR.
So it's not called Burbo?
VRBO or Verbo.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure. Those are competitors, right? Airbnb and Verbo,
Yeah.
VRBO.
Yeah. And there's Vacasa, there's booking.com. And now we're actually on Google as well. So you can find us there. There's all sorts of, we're not going to dive into
the
Airbnb.
link. No, just kidding. No, don't do that. But if you want to get a short-term rental and come and visit him and everybody in Corpus, you can email him and get we're going to put up a QR code in just a minute for you guys to find out more. Okay, so how then, once you realize, hey, I'm desiring more, looking for other things, how do you exactly draw your heart back from that?
I remind myself that I'm okay dying poor someday.
Oh yeah, thank you.
That's
you said
the
that,
biggest one. And then, do a Bible study on greed if I feel like it's deep enough for me. So sometimes nope, I'm good dying poor one day. My goal is to support this, that, and the other thing. And that's one of the things we talked about. We actually had a whole session on this with tent making is what is your, and actually we used one of your videos as well. I can't remember which one it was, but we talked about what's your plan. If you don't have a plan right now, then greed will become the spot that you go to.
Yeah.
So
you gotta, before you make the money, commit to godly giving it away. Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So we all came up with, okay, so what do you want to do? Like right now you're broken, you don't make any money, but someday, let's say you're making tens of thousands or hundreds or millions or whatever. What do you want to do for God with that money?
Yeah.
And so all coming up with kind of like commitments to God of I want to. And so for us, I was like, obviously first, I don't want to be paid by the church, but then I want to support future tent makers, or I want to plant a church based on my finances.
Okay.
That I would love to do that someday.
We have a little saying here. We want to build a building here, maybe a couple of buildings in Charleston. A couple of people are like, I'm going to win that lottery. And if I do, I'm going to build that church building. Well, maybe you could do it through a tent making process.
Sure.
So tell me in Corpus Christi, what a tent maker that you bring on and train, what does that look like for you as the leader of them? What's their life like? The payment structure, that not specific numbers, but how you structure payment and when they're off of payment, et cetera. Because this was kind of new for me when you shared it. Totally. It might be just your technique, right? Or is this something that you've gotten from other church leaders?
No one else. No, pretty much most of the tent making stuff is very groundbreaking with anyone I talk to. Awesome. So for us, what we do with tent makers, or the current model at least, which may transition in time, is we take if it's someone who's moving in and going, hey, I want to come and be a tent maker. Right now, we've got a couple of, and we're actually headed to the campus conference next weekend. And so we're going to pitch some of this to them.
In Asheville, is it?
In Asheville. Okay. Yep. The International Campus Ministry Conference with the ICOC. So we've got a couple of people that are tent makers in Corpus that don't fit the same model that we would love everyone to. So our current model is come in and work as a broke intern. We'll pay you for a year. We're probably going to house you with somebody else that you can live at pretty much for free. And so you're not going to make a bunch of money, but I expect you as a part of your tent making or a part of your ministry is that I want you to spend 2 hours a day building a business. So Monday through Friday. So 10 hours a week. But
in the summer, it's different?
No, well, if there's times where they need to push harder, then that's fine. Like a summertime, listen, if you need to spend 5 hours a day pushing during the summertime, or you've got a week before launch and you really need to do that, please don't put that, at this time during campus schedule or at that time during this ministry schedule. But so if you could put it here, that'd be great. But for the most part, I want you to spend 2 hours a day building this up with the idea that within 1 year, you can now, you're no longer paid by the church. And the business that we've helped you to build and that you've, really built on your own, that can now support that broke intern status for you. And then as time goes on, you continue to build that as your life stage changes as well. So you can't live on, the same that we paid you with for very long. So you're going to need to continue to grow your business.
Okay.
But as your life stage, so eventually, you move into your own place and you're sharing rent with roommates. So your business needs to increase to be able to provide for that. You get married, it really needs to increase. You have kids, it really needs to,
Okay, so let me throw you a curveball then. So it sounds like what you're saying, tent making is only for recently out of college people.
So like I said, that's one path, one model.
I know, we've talked about it.
So then we've got another guy who's actually on here, and he works for Apple actually. And they've got a great program that he's in where he can work kind of like I did with daycare, where it's
the gymnastics.
The gymnastics, I wound up pushing 35 hours a week.
Oh, okay. All right.
And that got a little hectic. So, but when I did the daycare, it was 20 hours a week maximum. And so I could do enough to do all those different ministries at the same time. And so he does the same thing where he works for Apple. It's an easy job. He can be on the phone and then boom, he jumps off and he can jump on campus or jump over to a midweek or whatever he needs to do. So I think
he's not fresh out of college, broke intern.
No. Ish.
Okay, yeah. So he still is. So what if
he's a grad student as well, actually?
Oh my goodness.
So
is that Carlos?
Like, yeah, he's
thumbs up to you, Carlos.
He's going crazy.
We can actually see him right there.
You might not recognize it. He just cut all of his hair off, actually.
So I put back to that video that we shot. Oh, that's right. I'm like, wow, you have great hair. Okay. Is this like a Samson thing? Anyways, Carlos, yeah. So what about like a 40-year-old, a 45-year-old? What about those people that are listening on the call and want to be a tent maker?
There's no hope.
You're hopeless. Okay, guys, you just got to tune into something else. Okay.
No, yeah. I mean, I think that's the boat that we're in. So for us, our specific route needs capital to start off with.
Which means you have to borrow money in order to get into what they're doing. That's leverage. Not everybody wants to leverage. It's very high interest rates, much higher risk today than it was, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago. But that's what you mean, working capital.
I mean, with capital, I mean, I've got my own money actually in the bank.
From the house that you sold.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I was going to say or leveraging money by borrowing it or having some friends or going in on something together, which is a possibility. It's a scary possibility.
That's real estate again, though.
It can be real estate again. I mean, or you have, if you live in a house already, maybe it's time to move into a different house if you wanted to go the house route. Or again, and this is a big part of tent making is figuring out the best path for you, which is why I built that whole Venn diagram. And
I'm going to grab it. Oh, it's right here. Okay.
Got it ready for you. It's normally colored, but I didn't have a color printer. So.
We're going to try to put this in. If you guys want to take a screenshot of this, if you're watching, this is the Venn diagram he's talking about.
Also, if you sign up for our emails, it comes in the first email you get. So there's a nice color version of that.
We're going to do, he ran out of color ink, but this is a QR code. If you want to get onto his Tentmaker email list and even join some of his Tentmaker meetings, he has a lot of people joining more and more. You can just take a screenshot of it with your cell phone and then join. You don't, in the Tentmaker ministry, purport to be the expert in all business, that you're guiding them on how to be this great business person, correct?
Correct.
So how do you manage that if what they're doing is not going to be real estate or your area of expertise?
Yeah. So one of the things we let people know is you need to, and I think this is true for if you go to business school or you go through any program, you need to find some sort of a mentor or a program. We were talking about franchises earlier. Maybe you've got a franchise and so you're jumping into their system already, or you go and you learn from somebody. And I think there's some good ways to get into something like that, where maybe there's an expert in a field, but they haven't written a book yet, or they haven't produced much content yet. You can be the person to come in and go, hey, let me train with you and I'm going to document everything we do. And what if we worked on a book or a podcast or something together as you take me through this process? And so you could maybe get training for free instead of having to pay all this money that somebody else might want, and help be a part of writing and publishing. So, I mean, there's some really cool ways that you could get in with an expert that might not have done much of their own promotion and information tools yet. So
let me throw in another little thing in from my perspective. As an executive coach, I know, and I did it before I became a coach, we can really analyze the amount of time we're putting into whatever career we have, even if it's a quote unquote 40-hour-a-week job, and look for ways of automating things, removing waste, reducing cost, and get back as much as 15 hours a week that we can reinvest into ministry. This is what I did my whole career. By God's grace, when I was at GE, I ran the eastern half of the US for GE Healthcare Clinical Systems. I did that working 20 hours a week. It was a $190 million business. There are ways for us, even though, what did we call that when you're working full-time and preaching?
Bi-vocational.
So that might be considered in the bi-vocational mode, which I guess it is. but if you can really focus on streamlining your processes, automating things in your full-time job, you can start to give much more time back to the ministry.
Yeah.
Okay. How many tent makers do you have in Corpus Christi right now?
I'd say we've got 2 that are doing it and one that is more in the boat that it sounds like you're bringing up that wants to he's a full-time GIS, global information system.
Okay, of course, yeah.
So he does that full-time coding, and we're trying to help him step away from that and build something to where he doesn't have to do that full time.
Okay.
And can scale back those hours to give more time back to God.
Okay. So it is a quarter till. Let's bring this in for landing. If people want to get a hold of you, we just put up that QR code. We'll put that link in the chat window. When they do get a hold of you, what are they going to get, or what are they going to find when they connect that way? What's that look like?
Totally. So what we're doing right now, honestly, because of my time, is, and kind of made this decision over the last couple of months as we've been reevaluating some things, but we're going to do seasonal podcasts. And so we've done our first season is, I think, wrapping up in the month of August. I've already pre-recorded them all.
And but we haven't seen them
gone. You haven't seen the rest of them. No.
Gotcha.
So there's still, I believe, 2 more to drop. And so we're doing podcasts that you can jump in and listen to at any time. We're doing it through YouTube. So super simple. My first round at it. So please forgive the earlier sessions. I was just put a camera up and let's record something. So, but so we've done that. And then as a part of that, we normally jump on after the pre-recorded thing, we jump on and do a Zoom roundtable discussion, accountability, some of that really helps everyone. Okay, where are you going through? We've done deep dives into people who go, okay, let's dig into your business, Sean. What are you doing? What are your goals? What are you after?
Okay.
And then everyone will give some input and kind of go, okay, here's where, I think we're at. One time someone mentioned, hey, can you critique me? And actually, can you do it for the whole table?
Oh, man.
And so we went around and I went,
bless that person's soul.
I went, you're afraid.
Yeah.
And literally it was like, I think you have fear in your life and that's what's holding you back. For you, this is what's holding you back, And it was
like, I take it back.
They were very vulnerable. It was incredible.
Let me just say, I forgot to ask this, and we're going to make this super brief, and then we got to go to Q&A. We're going to go to Q&A.
Yeah.
What is the spiritual training like that you give to the tent makers? Because we know there's going to be some of that entrepreneurial aspect. How are you training them spiritually to be a minister of God's word as a tent maker?
Right. So a part of it is in those podcasts, and we do talk about the spiritual aspect of things quite a bit. And we've brought in guest speakers to go, okay, how you communicate with your church, what you're doing and your time as you're a part of this. And so we had Ro Thrift on and she talked about that. She had a great time with her. But
where is she?
She is in Oklahoma.
Okay.
So her and her husband lead one of our churches over there. She was actually the event coordinator for that big conference we had in San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
So she was
real skilled.
Yeah, she is very skilled. So we had a great time doing that. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Spiritual training for those that want to be a tent maker, you doing it for your group.
Right. So inside of Corpus Christi, we work with them as interns as well.
Okay.
And so we're getting together frequently. We have staff meetings where they're involved, help them with Bible studies. We totally dig in on the spiritual side as well.
Is there memory verses involved?
There are not yet.
Carlos, we're going to have you memorize Psalm 73.
All of it.
All of it. Okay.
And then all Proverbs.
That's good. Thank you very much for that. We're going to open up the Q&A now. Joan, if you want to go ahead. Rice, you're up first. Thanks, man. And thank you once again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah. So here's my question now. Well, thanks for everything that you've presented. And I was just wondering, would you recommend the tent making model for all church ministers? Now, one reason I guess I'd ask that is because I'm aware like different congregations where contribution seems to be an issue. And so I'm imagining the more tent makers you have, the less salary that you need to raise. So is that something you'd recommend? Or do you think maybe it really depends on from one person to another, how effective they might be with the tent making model?
Yeah, I would say scripturally, I do believe that the worker deserves his wages. And so I do think there is a massive aspect to it is an honor to be in the full-time ministry. And I truly believe that for myself. right now. We are building a business to step out, but we are not yet. We are still funded by our local congregation personally. And I think there might be some interesting ways in the future where we could get more people involved in tent making that don't have an entrepreneurial heart already. But this is not an easy thing to do. I mean, we're talking about, it takes, you're building a business. Anyone who builds a business goes through a lot of stress. And then you have ministry on top of it. It's a lot. And I don't think so for me, I look at it and I go, I don't know that everyone is built to do this. I think there's some people who are natural entrepreneurs and they chose the route of ministry. And I think a lot of those people, though, could transition and build a business at the same time. We're looking at the next generation, and a lot of the people who are graduating from college right now there's a much higher tendency to want to build something themselves than go work in a workforce. They don't want to work for somebody; they want to work for themselves. But then they also have this ministry concept. And some of them, I think what we're doing is we're trying to capture kind of a lost generation where a church only has so much money to even hire interns. So let's say there's 10 people that want to be interns and you've got enough money to hire 2. Well, that means that 8 people never get a shot to do full-time ministry. But if we took another 4 of those 10 and went, well, what do you think about trying to build your own business? And we can't give you the same amount, but what if you gave you a little bit less? And so for a year, or maybe we've got an opportunity like Apple, or actually we've got this opportunity in Corpus where we're going to own a coffee shop right across from the church building. And we're going to try and pay baristas top dollar. And so you could come and you'd work 15 to 20 hours a week and be able to support yourself that way, working at our coffee shop while training in ministry at the same time. Do you want to come and do that? And you're not going to make much, but we'll train you in ministry at the same time, which was kind of my pitch when I moved to San Antonio. They said, hey, we don't have money, but we'll train you. And I said, that's all I want. And so I went to San Antonio for the training. But so I think, I don't think that every single church leader should do it, but I think there's so much great potential, including imagine if we did this with a couple of people, we could plant the next church that is fully funded on day one.
Yeah.
It would cost nothing. Once someone starts training, they're ready to be sent out, and they get sent out with 10 to 20 people or couples. That church has no financial obligation from anybody else day one, and could be done in a small city that traditionally takes a longer time to get up and running because you have to build relationships on a deeper level with a lot of people. So there's so many cool things that I think could be done with it, including Sean and I have talked about before. What if you had a virtual working planting where you have virtual workers that go and plant a place? For instance, in Texas, College Station's a really tough one to keep planted because it is a college town where A&M is at, and people move out all the time. They graduate and leave. So they're doing a great job of converting people, but the church isn't growing because people leave all the time. It's move out, move out, move out. And the job industry there is just really bad unless you're a teacher at the college. So a place like that, boom, self-funded for the next 20 years if you had virtual workers move there.
Okay, Jesse, you are up.
I'm an entrepreneur. Me and my wife has a business and supporting our own ministry. By the grace of God, I was a missionary for 6 years, and while working as a tech support for AOL, and then
AOL. How about that?
Yeah, I was, and after 6 years, I go back to my own ministry and serve as a church leader. For now, we have 283 disciples. Now, and we planted last year a new church.
Wow.
With the fact that in the Philippine family of churches, we are dependent with the U.S. support. I'm very grateful on that, and I appreciate all the U.S. ICOC churches supporting the Philippine family of churches. 70% of our minister here are non-full-time. And appreciate your heart to support those non-full-time minister. And I would love to set up a Zoom meeting to meet them. If you would love to talk and interview those more or less 50 church leader and women's ministry leader, non-full-time. They have a job and still the same expectation from the full-time minister.
Yeah.
The question is, the church has an unstable financial support. If he or she already had a good career or got a good job or doing a good business as entrepreneur, with a growing ministry, are you still encourage them to be a full-time?
I think, that's a really good question. I mean, I think, do you mean full-time with the church or full-time?
Full-time in the church. Here in the Philippines, we call it the full-time and non-full-time, but it's the same. Actually, it's when you maybe non-paid minister and paid minister. That's the difference. We got a lot of non-paid minister, but it's still
that are bivocational, right, Jesse?
Yeah, same expectation with the full-time.
Yeah.
Are you still encouraging them to go on a paid minister, or still, or you may suggest that stay there, do your thing, something like that?
I mean, I think to me, I would go, can we implement some of what Sean talked about earlier? Can we buy back your time? So how much, is there any way that we can figure out a way that you can scale back the hours that you spend supporting yourself? You still support yourself, but can we scale back the amount of time to give even more back to the church? I mean, it's going to be up to everybody's calling, right? And so again, somebody might be, okay, you should really be paid full time so that you can have an extra 20 or 30 or 40 hours a week to give back to the ministry. And for me, I'm like, I want to build something where I can spend 5 hours a week and then I can give back, and I can hire 6 interns with my salary, or I could hire another couple to go plant the next place we want to, or there's so much else we could do with that money. So to me, if they've got the heart of, I want to do everything for God and I'm already put in this great position, then let's figure out how to buy back time with them. But they're already, for them, tent making is scaling back what they're already doing. And especially in an unstable financial situation, that it would be a big burden to try and get all of those people on full time. So I like, okay, maybe we can implement something where we purchase a product or a virtual worker, or we have an assistant that you're scaling back the amount of hours that you have to spend a week so that you can give more to God. So
if I can also say, Jesse, just briefly, I recommend, if you're going to go the bivocational route, if you're in a bivocational role now, which most of us who give our life to Christ, we're working full time, anything that we give back to the ministry, which is a lot of hours, is by quote unquote bivocational. I recommend coming up with your business concept while you're working full time. Start to grow your side business that's going to eventually become large enough. But the key is knowing exactly how much money it costs to live, to the penny, your budget for 1 year's worth of survival, hotel, rent, food, electricity, clothing, heat and hot water, whatever. Calculate all of that out for 1 year. Then while you're working full time, building your business on the side part-time, save 1 year's worth of salary, 1 full year. Once you have that 1 full year saved, you will have had 2 or 3 years growing your business, understanding client acquisition. What is the cost to get 1 new client? How do I market? What's all my content? That's all now fully developed. Then with 1 year in the bank, you leave the corporate world and support yourself full time. That is another way to do it. That is exactly how I did it. Working for GE, HID, and Avid, 3 different companies I did that with for 4 years, and then jumped out about 9 years ago. That is another way. Okay, Nancy, thank you for your patience. You're up.
Oh, thank you. So I was so interested when I got your email, and actually, I think by the Holy Spirit, I was getting back on Rob Skinner's podcast and stumbled on the podcast where you were introducing this whole idea. And one of the things you mentioned was just really being able to plant more churches instead of waiting for the finances to come. You were able to get more churches planted. So I have 2 different questions. One is, how much fundraising, not for yourself specifically, but how many times are there ministers or church leaders or, people like yourself wanting to plant, whether you reach out to members of different congregations for fundraising? Many years ago, my late husband and I were able to fund a church up in Maine for an intern that they wanted to hire for a year. So it was a financial commitment, short term, 1 year, but it just happened to be in a time when we were able to do that. So to how much of that happens, and I know there might be political, things between churches. So, or things to consider. Maybe I shouldn't say political. And the second is last year I was able to start investing in some real estate and realize that there's a lot of needs for unhoused individuals, especially in Charleston. There's a 2-year wait for affordable housing. And I'm just wondering how much, and I don't think that's unusual across the country. It might vary the length of time, but for here, it's a 2-year wait. How much has that been explored with disciples investing in real estate? Not to make this a real estate class, but in order, to really kind of give back to the community around where your church lives. It's just, feeding the poor, housing people. It's, it's definitely giving back. So those are the 2 questions I have.
Yeah. So to answer the second question, that sounds like something you should totally start. A ministry doing that. I haven't heard of it before.
Me either. It's amazing idea.
I love the idea, and you should totally run with it if you can. But so that's the first one. The second one is that so far nobody has reached out to try and help. As far as with planting the different churches, to me, I look at it. It's going to be different from city to city, but for us, if we can get an intern funded for a year for $12,000 total, that would be great.
That's it.
$12,000 to plant a church. If you think about it,
amazing.
One time, if it works. I mean, there's a lot of room for God in here, right? Yes. Maybe they're not built for the ministry. We're talking about, brand new, fresh interns. I've been through churches, and maybe 30% of the interns don't work out. That number's probably higher in different places that are full-time. So there's a lot of room for God here. It's not a guarantee.
She's asking about you as a tent maker going out to people who are a little bit wealthier and asking them to help fund. How often do you do that? Is that something you can build into the tent maker ministry? Am I representing that right, Nancy?
Yeah. Yes.
I have not. I have never asked for a dime for tent makers.
Okay.
So So
what do you think about that, though? I mean, I think it's a great idea.
It's a great idea. I have lived off the principle of sharing good news and not asking for money.
Okay, so no calls to action from you. We got to help. I'm going to help you with this.
Okay.
We got to have a call to action. And I do love the ad. Go ahead, Nancy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just to give perspective on the financial capabilities as you age. So once you become an empty nester, your income continues to go up, but your expenses go way down.
Sure.
What specifically happened, and I believe this was the Holy Spirit as well. I had applied for a job and got the job, during the interview, was given a $20,000 increase.
Wow.
And on my way home, I was thinking of all the things that we could do with the new $20,000 that year. I arrived home to get a letter in the mail from a minister in Maine who asked specifically, would you mind,
that's not a coincidence. That is God.
Completely God. Would you like to finance an intern over the next year? I believe that the Holy Spirit is working in those ways. And so I just put that out there. I know I'm not the only one that's in that situation. And then as you continue to age, your finances, and I don't think this is the same for everyone, but I know that there's been a lot of disciples who are in my age and stage in life who have money and in the heart to give. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. What he did do, and I want to connect what you've already done to what she's recommending. When he first moved to Corpus, he had the idea already. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be great if people who have a remote job can move here to help be a part of the church while using their remote job. And he created what? How long was the video that you and Waldina did?
Under 2 minutes. It was 1 minute and 30 seconds, maybe.
1 minute 30 second, very high production value video. So what do you think about doing one of those videos based on what she's saying?
Yep.
And putting on the ICOC Facebook page?
Yeah, I'm down. I'll do that. That's fine.
Okay, and then you have to give her credit for it.
That sounds good.
All right. And then she'll give God, I know, Nancy, I'm just kidding. Yes, Catherine, please. Thank you.
So I'm in the Philippines like Jesse. Jesse is, and his wife is one of our closest friends. So they're in the city,
That's
we're
cool.
in the province. I wrote my question so that I'll be focused on it. Buying back time. So one of the potential challenges is when self-supporting members have a higher tendency, or actually my tendency, is to influence the decision-making direction of the church.
Oh boy.
Because they have a say, which I'm not saying this because that's my perspective, potential, which could potentially lead to some disagreements. So how do you prepare someone planning to be part of this bi-vocational or self-supporting in watching their hearts?
We did talk about this.
Disagreements,
Yeah, he told me about a story, which I'm not going to repeat. If he wants to, he can. Do you remember the story where, hey, anytime I want, I can just, if you don't like what I'm doing, I can just pick up and go.
Yeah, totally.
That? Yeah, that's kind of.
And we don't want to leave a hole in that, and we want to be united in the heart, because the focus really is to help out more. But sometimes, things happen, and how do you prepare a person to be in that situation? So currently, my husband and I are inclined to invest a lot of time in building something related to mental health and child psychology. So I know it will involve a lot of finances. So we're looking into, like, I earn from my virtual assistant job. And my husband is earning like an Uber on the side. And we're in that already. We're both 100% freelancing. Thank God for the opportunity. And that's the direction we both wanted. So in order for us to be prepared in our hearts, and I'm glad that you said about greed, which is very its potential, and also the pride in being able to do that and serve. So I'm not so sure if I'm making sense, but that's my part.
So what I'm hearing is, how do we stay out of church politics as money in the future?
Yeah.
I think it's a really good question. We've had some coaching recently. We've been on a little bit of a sabbatical here, which has been incredible. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we had to do, or that we were encouraged to do coming back online, is reevaluating what our job actually is and looks like, and what we're supposed to be serving God with. And I fight what does the church want me and think I should do? That's my own heart. And the guy helping me out said, I would encourage you to actually throw that away and consider what God is calling you to do for the church. And that's a tough spot to be in, because there's a lot of opinions and there's a lot of people in the church. And so I read 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus and Acts 6 and went, okay, what does God call me to do in the role that I currently serve the church in? And at the end of the day, I had to do I've got to be true to God. And a lot of that, I hear that a lot of time used the wrong way, actually. I got to be true to God. And so people wind up doing things that are ungodly, unfortunately, or not working with people, or not, and so for me, I look at it and I go, listen, we've got to serve God. And a part of serving God is serving one another. Yeah. And so we've got to work together as much as possible. As an evangelist, at the end of the day, I answer to God and not the members of my congregation even. I answer to God with how I've helped the members of my congregation. Go ahead.
So if I can jump in on this, Catherine, please stop me and correct me if I'm wrong. She's even coming from the perspective of, what if you're the tent maker, you're self-supporting, making some money, even supporting the growth of the church, and leaders in that church that you're the tent maker in want to go a different direction, right? Or you're someone who's bi-vocational, giving a lot of money to the church. What happens when the people that are leading the church in that situation don't go in the direction that you're wanting? Is this somewhat of what you're asking, Catherine?
Yeah, that's hypothetical. I'm not giving a lot.
Yeah. So in that situation, let me just say, this is only my opinion. We are not giving to the church. We're giving to God. Giving is a reflection of what's in our heart. Short of the church leaders doing something illegal, embezzling, who are we to know for sure what God is doing through that church leader? Even though we're the ones giving a lot of our money, let's say, it really is a sacrifice to God. That's what's happening. If we have influence and we think, you know what, I'd really like it if they would consider going this other direction. I'm not as excited about the direction we're going. I think it's wonderful to go sit down with them and go, hey, forget the amount of money I give. In fact, I'm betting almost every church leader today, at least in the ICOC, wants nothing to do with knowing what anybody gives.
Most of us can't anymore, actually. It's not legal for us to know.
Okay, good. So they don't want to know. So you can go there. They're not going to know how much you give. And you can ask them, hey, not even mentioning what you give. I did a whole video about this on my YouTube channel. It's about 40 minutes long, how to use your talents and gifts in God's church. And I teach you in that YouTube video a technique on how to plant the seed in your full-time ministry leader's mind to get them to change the direction of something going on. What we did here in Charleston, for those that are here know, the guy that used to lead the church here, Lowell Hoover, amazing friend of mine, 4 years, I would meet with him every other week at McDonald's to try to get him to move away from a certain thing that we were doing and try something completely crazy different. 4 years. But I didn't do it arrogantly or like, you got to listen to me, I give a bunch of money or anything like that. It's just a technique called planting the seed. And he did it. After 4 years, he did a radical change in our local church. You can do that. Please go see if you can find that video on my YouTube channel, how to use your gifts for God's church.
Can I just add real briefly? I love the widow and Jesus for that story. She gives to a corrupt system.
Oh boy.
That Jesus knows is corrupt. The Pharisees and the Sadducees, like that entire system was so corrupt internally. I mean, there were some good guys, and he says nothing about you shouldn't give. He could have stopped all those people. All he does is highlight her faith in giving.
Wow. Great point.
Even to me, I go, even if you know it's something that's corrupt and illegal. I mean, we live in a day and age where you could just send the check a different direction. Right. It's a little easier than it was for them going to temple and giving, but he doesn't bring that up at all. He doesn't go, you know what, you should save your money and invest in this ministry over here instead. He goes, your faith is incredible.
Very cool. Okay. Thank you,
awesome.
Catherine.
Thank you.
I appreciate you mixing it up a little bit. Okay. Ernest, my man, you are up.
I was just going to ask, this has been great. Really appreciate the session here. I was wondering if some of the people that are on the line that are currently tent makers could share how it's been the first 6 months, year, whatever, how that's gone and what would have been some challenges so that other people that might be thinking about it can be aware of those.
Okay, I love that. So Carlos and Maria, what do you guys think? How do you feel about sharing a little bit?
Like, it's horrible. Don't do it.
Okay. Carlos.
Yeah, sure. One, I think the idea, I think it's, I love it because I think I'm coming from an angle where I think about how coming into the ministry and those that you're trying to help, they can maybe view those that are helping out in the church as kind of having maybe just doing it because they have to. And I think being someone who is able to be a tent maker, it's a way to show the love and the fact that, I'm not my heart is truly because I want to help. And it's not because it's, I'm getting paid to do it. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. That's one part that I really love about Tentmakers. I think as far as challenges, well, one thing that I appreciate is the fact that God had provided a virtual job for me where I can work I was in Houston and I can work in Corpus. So I think that's something that Nate mentioned that got me was if you're able to work from home, we would appreciate your help. And I'm grateful to God for that. I think having a virtual job helps. I think the challenges would be maybe definitely like finding jobs, especially in cities where maybe, it's harder to find a job. And I would say a challenge would probably be also finding training in specifically what you're looking to do. As the Bigbees, they're great. They're leading the, they have like the Airbnb, and I'm just thinking about others who maybe are trying to go a different direction and finding perhaps like that specific training and orientation. So that could be another challenge, maybe trying to obtain that.
Great insight. Thank you.
Let me add on top of that. Thank you, Carlos. I think within the tent making realm, a lot of times what we're thinking and talking is future ministers, but actually one of my favorite tent makers is Glenn Neergardner, and he runs his own marketing business, spends a very low amount of time doing that every week. And then he runs admin for a bunch of small churches and doesn't take any money for that at all. So there's all these, there's all these extra ways that you can serve God. Like if Glenn's probably not the ministry guy. He's not going to be an evangelist one day, but small church admin is like one of the biggest things that I would hate having to do all the time. And so he can provide it at a great cost for us.
Zero.
To help. Well, no, because he hires a bunch of people in different
gotcha. Okay.
areas to run things. But yeah, he facilitates it. And he'll take calls with us and all sorts of stuff, but he's able to serve in a way that a lot of other people can't. So even within tent making, there's a lot of different areas that, it doesn't have to be just a, evangelist style individual or women's minister.
Like an executive Christian coach.
Hey.
Okay. So Carlos, you've been at it for 2 years. Yes.
3 years now.
3 years.
Sorry.
And how did you first find out about the Corpus opportunity?
Yeah, I think it was a great idea.
How'd you hear about it?
Nate. I think it was Nate that came up with it. It might not, I'm not sure, but I know it was a church. They came up with an idea of having a singles conference to kind of use those to bring in people that, to pretty much get them to serve, in areas that are needed.
Let me rephrase what you just said. Nate's going to have had a singles conference to trick people into coming to Corpus and then have them fall in love with the area and then become a tent maker.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, Carlos. All right. Maria, tell us a little bit about your experience. And by the way, great question, Ernest.
Hold on. We did, though. We actually decided in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, at the time, we were the chairs for the singles committee. And we decided that we wanted to start taking the singles conferences to first all the small churches in our region to help support and get as many singles to move to them as possible. And then eventually we were going to go to the places we want to plant to help people gain a vision for where we're going. So we started it in Corpus, and that's the first one that he came to. And so
snagged him.
Yeah, we got him. And then we moved on from there.
Thanks a lot, Carlos. Maria, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say that particularly in my situation, tent making has been fun, but challenging in a sense of it's a mental challenge for me. And so I definitely have struggled with a lot of different things of really, one of the things that I mainly struggled with right in the very beginning before I met Waldina and Nate, I was in the insurance industry and I was an insurance broker and I did all of that, but I didn't want to continue to do it because it was just very hard for me to want to give my whole heart in when I really wanted to do ministry as well. And it was just such a balance to be part of a world with being around millionaires and not getting sucked into that idea. And so I left that and I went into ministry and I got tons of training over the summer last year. And then eventually I met the Bigbees. And so it was such a a coincidence to have, not even coincidence, I think it was just God. It 100% was God. Just to meet the Bigbees, to see that it was possible to do a business for God and also do ministry. But I would say that it definitely has been a challenge to make sure that like I don't get wrapped up in the mindset of where I was right before I left to go into ministry. And so I would say that if you think that you are strong and that you can handle it, then I would say go into tent making. But I think for me, I'm constantly trying to continue to keep myself on this path of like, no, like God put you here. Like, it's okay. Like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to get back to that old mindset. Like, God has you here for a reason. And so I think that's where I'm at. But yeah.
Thank you. Very insightful. Can I ask one follow-up question on that? May I, Maria?
Yeah, go for it.
I'll call it a struggle, maybe not the best word for it, or the difficulty, the challenge more with the amount of revenue, the effort that it takes to run a business and do ministry, or the temptation of being pulled into worldly things?
Yeah, I would say it's not the first or the last. I would say it's the second one, to be too caught up in the business where I forget the ministry. And that's not where I would want to be, but that's just a fear of mine where it's just like, there's so much excitement going on. There's a snowball effect. And it's just like, oh no, God gave you a successful business. And it's
what do I do
I'm
now?
afraid to be successful.
I want to encourage you with something. If I can encourage you, I did interrupt you. I am so sorry. Nate and I, with his wife, Dean, are going to have lunch tomorrow with a couple here in Charleston, Jim and Kathy Bozard. Jim ended up building this incredibly successful corrugated box company. And as the CEO, he personally led every Thursday a Bible study group in his company. He has brought at least 6 or 7 people over the years to Christ through his being the CEO. When all of my executive coaching is, when you're at a certain level in the company, people will listen to you. You can teach the gospel, share the insights of God's word, show love. But when you start getting up into higher levels or higher roles of responsibility with authority in a company, people will listen a lot longer. Then imagine if you're the CEO of the company, you can literally choose what culture you want for all of your employees to be around all day long. And that could literally be the gospel of Christ as the culture. So being successful, the more success we get, the more opportunity we have to influence more lives as we hire employees, et cetera. That by itself could be your ministry. Just what are your thoughts very quickly about that, Maria, please?
I think that's an amazing idea. I think that is such a dream to go out and be able just to seek and save the lost in a place that you were able to build. And
And there's a group in New Hampshire called Net Lease Capital. They're financial advisors. They hire only followers of Christ. Everybody in their company. Well, no, maybe I should. I think the last few years, because they've gotten so big, it's limited them some, but 90%, they start their meetings in prayer together. It's endless. Giants for God. Please go to this website, giantsforgod.com, and see these industry giants, very famous ones that were Christians and never backed away from their faith, even though they experienced success. Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that, Maria. Kimberly, you're up.
Okay. No, thank you so much. Actually, Sean, this is totally what I've been trying to wrap my head around, because I've been having so many different ideas, as you know, being more seasoned now of what I've been doing actually in my second career, loving my coaching, trying to figure out, and I've already talked to you about this, where am I supposed to be doing this? So I've listened to a few different coaching experts, actually. Most of them have been Christians, but to really listen to the spirit and where God really wants to lead me in this. And I just find it so interesting. I get more excited and I get more passionate about it because I know this is where I'm supposed to be. Now it's implementing, it's getting the collaboration, it's trying to wrap myself around again, what direction am I going with this? But it is exciting. I appreciate what Nancy had said. I not in a position really, honestly, right now financially, but I believe that I can be. And maybe there's just some more lessons, along the line for me to grow, obviously, and to learn. But I'm just super excited about going through this process and hearing this. And I know I'm on here for a reason. And I really appreciate Maria, her face just lit up when you mentioned that idea about, continually being who you are, and working through those things and being an impact to people around you. And that's exactly how I feel about it. The other thing is, I think it's more of a comment than anything else, because I have 4 pages of notes right now. So I got to kind of figure. Yeah, I got 4 pages, and I still have questions, but I don't want to take all this time because I'm trying to figure out how to put my questions together so it makes sense. But I'm so excited about this. This has really been an answered prayer. Thank you, Nate.
Oh, amen to that. Let me just ask Nate, in front of you, you're not a wealthy guy.
No.
You didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in real estate when you got into it at all.
No, we started getting paid $400 a month when we were working in San Antonio. I mean,
yeah, he may look like Hollywood, money bags. He is a humble guy from humble beginnings, an amazing mother who happens to be on the line with us. Lori Newman is his mother. She just waved to us. But so we all of us, and I know this because as an executive coach, I hear this constantly. When someone mentions something about anything that they're doing professionally, we, at least in America, but maybe any Western culture or Western influence culture, immediately attach to it wealth and prosperity. We don't usually think about it, not that you are, Kimberly, but we don't usually think about it from, oh, this person's able to achieve this with humble means. We think of what's someone's net worth, what crib do they have, how big of a car do they drive. There is a way to be wildly successful and give all of your money away and live very humbly.
Yeah.
So, and I know you know this, of course, this is not at you. I'm just saying in general, we can start our businesses and figure out different ways to finance growth early on, even if we don't have the deep pockets or rich capital, as long as we commit it to God. Commit your way to the Lord, and He will do this. He'll make the justice of your cause shine like the noonday sun. Thank you very much for sharing that.
I want to add one more thing to kind of what Maria said, or the question or the struggle with it, and how you answered. For me, some of the opportunities to reach out and some of the opportunities that God has brought to us would not be possible without us jumping into this realm. So for us, building this business helped to provide some relationships that, like, Maria, you know what Barisi Village is going to be. We're basically going to get, this guy is building this $1 billion development in our old backyard golf course area. And so we're getting a church building because of this relationship. He is going to give us and fund a coffee shop to train missionaries out of on this crazy Venetian styled property. And then on top of that, no one really knows this in the public yet, but we're going to, it's okay. We're going to build a resort there that has all of our Airbnbs on it. And we've been able to speak in front of the college and be at the city council meeting. There's all these relationships that have happened because we've been able to dive into this. And as I look at the scriptures, Sean mentioned it earlier, reaching out to some of the prominent Greek men and women of their day and age can only happen when you build these types of relationships and when you start to build these types of businesses. Like Sean said, some people won't listen to you in the world until you kind of jump into that space. So there's a part of investing in some of these things that actually helps you to reach out to different people that you wouldn't have had that opportunity to ahead of time. So anyway.
Amen. Thank you for that. Very awesome. Thank you very much, Kimberly, for that. By the way, you have such great, amazing energy. Something is going to unfold very quickly. I'm convinced of it, but understanding what our own niche is as a professional coach, you're taking the exact right amount of time to figure out what that is. It's time well spent. Let me just encourage you with that. Ernest, let's go to you if you still have your question, and we'll come back to Judy.
Yeah, my question was more on typically when we're looking for an intern or something, we try to go through a screening process and that type of thing to see if it's even a fit or if it makes sense. Is there something like that you go through? If somebody calls you and says, "Hey, I think I want to be a tent maker," do you recommend that for just anybody? Or are you, I mean, I know you've got the financial guy that's a tent maker, quote unquote, but is there a process or something you look for to do that, or just anybody that wants to come do it, and we'll see what happens in a year? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So
does it make sense?
Right now, there's kind of different stuff. There's like, hey, come watch our podcast and, get as much help as you can from online or join the online stuff. If you're going to come in locally, like what Carlos did not come to be a tent maker. That was not how he landed in Corpus. He got inspired by what we were doing and said, I want to move and help out in any way we can. Then we started building tent makers and went, listen, you're pretty much a tent maker. And we did hire him for a year, not to be a tent maker, but just because we had money for an intern. And at the end of it, I'm going to brag on him here at his heart. He said, can you not pay me anymore? I can do this Apple thing. I'd rather have another intern. So can we save the money for me and hire someone else?
Wow, that is so awesome.
So so that was his heart, which I love so much, and went, okay, absolutely. And then the tent makers thing starting, and we started looking for an intern who could also hopefully be a tent maker at the same time. And
what's the screening process, though? If anybody comes to you locally, let's say.
Right now, if anyone comes locally, because we're headed to the campus conference next week, we don't have money right now, but I trust that God will bring in some eventually. So as we talk to people who are coming in, it's going to be, we don't have a rigorous screening process, but there will absolutely be an aspect to that about, where do you see yourself? What do you want to do? Do you have any background building any business whatsoever? And that doesn't have to be a prerequisite, but it would be great to have someone that does. So right now it's a little bit, hey, can you come and be an intern? And are you eager about this? Does this sound something that's exciting to you? And that will probably change. Like now that, Maria's coming up on a year here in October, there's some things I want to change moving forward. I go, okay, here's some different here's some different markers to hit on. And so things are changing and forming and transitioning as we speak. I do not have a rigorous process right now, though, for screening.
Ernest, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just trying to get a feel, like if here in Charleston, say we wanted to, it's an interesting idea. How would we do that? And what should we look for? What are this would be worthwhile, and hey, we could raise the money to do the $12,000 a year or whatever. We can get somebody to let the person live with them, but are we looking for a certain type of person? Because I'm thinking, even with what you said a minute ago, going to an ICM or a campus ministry, I'm hiring a campus kid. I mean, some of them might have business experience, but a lot of them have just been in campus and maybe they got converted last year. And so, they don't have that, whatever, you know what I mean? So just trying to get a feel for what we should look for.
Right. So to me, actually, I've got a high school student that I'm starting to build a relationship right now, and he's already invested in the stock market. He's built his own business and he's doing some of that. And then he also has a potential interest to go into the ministry. So he's the type of guy where I'm like, let's keep talking, dude. Come on down to Corpus. Let's hang out, have a good time. And his mom is very much, hey, you should keep talking to Nate. And she loves the idea of him coming and being a tent maker. I haven't even pitched the idea to him yet. We're just building the relationship and some of that. And he started asking questions about, okay, so what do you train people in as far as business is concerned? Last time we were hanging out, he's like, yes, totally ideal candidate, right? I mean, a high school student, and that's what we're doing with our kids. Our kids, we're in the process of forming their LLC right now and trying to get them started on entrepreneurship. So the fun thing, actually, this concept might even start translating over to teen conferences.
There are teen conferences in the ICOC?
Yeah, there's youth and family conferences, and every once in a while they'll do a teen conference that is actually led by teens and planned by teens.
Okay.
There's oversight from the youth and family committee, but going and doing something like that and teaching these kids, hey, here's another way to, anyway.
Let me just say to Ernest's point, and I'm not speaking for you, Ernest, you can correct me, and then we'll go to you next, Judy. Thank you. You can actually have people in the local church you're in, too small for you because your church is under 50, but have local church members say, look, I like this idea of a tent maker, and you can get some money from them. That was kind of something you threw out there. Yes, Ernest?
Right. Yeah.
And then how about the tent makers' parents? They're in college. They come here. They've already paid for their college mostly. Mom and Dad, can you help me be a tent maker here? $12,000 for the first year. I'm going to get trained in ministry and put that word out. That is something that's very possible. It's like instead you end after 4, instead of going to get your master's, you become a tent maker. That to me is such a short putt, to use a golf analogy. It makes complete sense. Forget the master's, which would cost you another 40 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get you to pay 12,000 for your student to learn how to lead a ministry while growing entrepreneurially, a business mindset. What do you think of that, Ernest?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. I like his idea with the teen, because there are teens and younger people that are thinking that way, whether it's social media or whatever, and just giving them that vision of, hey, what about you're self-funded? But just trying to figure out how would we implement that? How do we do that? So he answered my question, I think, for the most part. And I'll see
really great question. Thank you for that, Ernest. Just a quick point. There's a thing called the immutable law of labor, which states if a lot of people can do the job and a lot of people are willing to do the job, it won't pay very much. So the tent making aspect requires, like Kimberly was even saying, a niche.
Mm-hmm.
If a lot of people are doing it and a lot of people can do it, a lot of people want to and can, your potential to earn enough money to support yourself to be in the ministry is going to be much lower. There's much higher risk. So we do want to put diligence into, okay, what can I do? Paul, if you think about it, was an older dude when he went into tent making. He was a Pharisee. He probably made his money from that because we know in Philippians 4, he says, I know what it's like to have a whole lot of money and almost none. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I think that statement literally means I can be poor and be happy because of Christ.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Judy, for your patience. Great question, Ernest. Judy, you're up.
Good morning, Sean.
Hello. So sorry that I stiff-armed you earlier. My bad.
It's okay. So question for you. I'm wondering if you guys can talk a little bit about the automation you spoke about. Because I think automation can help one be a tent maker, right? Or be a better tent maker. So I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about maybe some of the strategies you're using for automation.
So, Judy, can you see our images? Can you see our face?
Yes. Yeah,
Did you see Nate's eyes light up?
I can see half of him.
So this is Judy Letourneau in New Hampshire. She is a tent maker.
Oh, cool.
She is doing it.
Awesome.
Has this amazing house church that her and her husband have built. Lots of people come. I would just love to interview you, Judy, at some point, but go ahead with her question, Nate. What do you think? And keep it dumbed down for us.
Well, So, I mean, it depends. Yes. Within each industry, it's going to be different, and it's going to change next week compared to this week. I mean, Sean and I, we spent probably 20 minutes last night talking about the new AI thing we've heard of that the other one had not. Yeah. So we went back and forth. Did you know that AI is doing this now and you can do this and, all these different aspects of it. So AI has really changed a lot. And some stuff that has been around and has been automated for a while is now being called AI that was already there before. So there's so much, like right now we are onboarding with a company that is they're an AI for managing short-term rentals. Managing short-term rentals, Airbnbs, is a lot of work actually. And so we decided we don't want to do that work. Once we got to the third property or third door for Airbnb, we said, we're going to use the money from this property to make our lives easier and invest it in different things in order to do that. So
like the AI,
like the AI, but stuff where like for us, our locks, our codes for our locks are automatically sent. They're on during the person's stay. They turn off during the person's stay so they can't get back into our properties. The thermostats know if someone's there or not. There's all these smart devices and tools that we use in our industry. So a lot of it is going to be industry specific, but chatbots are becoming a thing. So now our property in San Antonio, we have a chatbot answering most of the questions for us. And so it scoured our entire, it knows how we speak, how we talk, and it's answering questions for us. It's in a beta process right now. So someone oversees all the answers that go through. But there's a lot of, again, this could be an entire, episode you do honestly on how to automate different things within each industry. But to me, there are overlaps, but there is a lot that's industry specific. The other big thing you could do is hire virtual workers. VAs was a massive topic. Virtual assistants. VAs was a huge topic at the short-term rental conference that we went to, and opened my eyes to you can hire a VA to do almost any aspect of your business that you don't want to do from overseas, and it helps them because the dollar ratio changes. It's beneficial for them, and it's beneficial for you because it's so cheap to hire somebody overseas to do the same job. There might be controversy on that, but anyway, there's a lot of different things that you can do. It is industry specific, but there's overlap.
We also have, I want to come back to you in just a second, Judy. We have someone on the line, Jason Tomlinson. He's in the bottom left-hand corner of our screen. I just want to interview him on one of these calls because he knows how to use AI like no one I've ever met. He's a technological guy already, but he is really masterful at it. He wouldn't say that because he knows so much about it. He knows how little he knows. But for the rest of us, really at a masterful level. So someday, Jason, me and you will have a little conversation about that. So Judy, back to you. What do you think? What are your thoughts? What other questions?
That's a good start. We do some short-term rentals as well. So I'm just wondering how we can automate some of that process, especially the trying to find renters. But maybe this is a side topic. So
did you get his email address in the chat window?
Yep, I got it.
Good. Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great to have you, Judy. And so sorry I stiff-armed you a minute ago. I didn't know that was you. I should get used to the fact that Judy's iPhone is Judy Letourneau. Okay, we're really getting close to the top of the hour. I think we're going to wrap it up. Jason, you didn't mind me putting you on the spot there, did you, Tomlinson?
Nope. That's fine. Now we'll find a weekend.
Yeah, we will talk more. You guys just have to come and visit.
Does it mean I have to come to Charleston? Yeah, exactly. Okay,
yeah, listen to this. Listen to this. I was going to have Nate stay at friends of mine houses here, the people we're having lunch with tomorrow, because in my house, my spare bedroom just had a bed frame. And then the closer it got to this, I'm like, man, why don't I just fill up my spare bedroom? Now it is immaculate as far as I can say.
It is.
And I'm ready to start having people over. So Jason, let's set a time. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining. If you guys want to reach out to Nate, you have his information. Maybe close to setting a record, having 30-something people on up until 10 minutes to the top of the hour.
Cool.
Congratulations. Thank you all for your great questions. Maria and Carlos, thank you too, especially for joining. It's really great having your perspective too. Folks, have a great rest of your weekend. To God be the glory. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll know when I create a new video. Please also consider becoming a member at Motivationeer.com. Your membership really supports this channel. And don't forget, your career is not just a way to make a living, it's a way to transform the world.